Can we hit? Are we good? Oh.
I'm good with the glare on my glasses?
Yes, man.
Sure.
You want us to powder you down a bit? Or do you
you can powder me down.
Is that what you want?
Yeah, you can. If it's not going to be a hassle.
No,
it's gonna make you more feminine. Is what it's gonna do.
Yeah, no.
You guys are rolling. Can we chat? We can chat while it gets powdered.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Zimasa, thank you so much for coming through to the Penuel show.
It's a pleasure to be here. I think this is a very important platform. I think it's underrated. Maybe you don't see what this is meant to be, but I think a lot of people actually do see it.
Sure.
I don't want to say Joe Rogan, but I get to...
Come on, boy! Call it!
Joe Rogan, yeah. It feels very Joe Rogan-esque because anything goes. And it's important to have...
Here's this feminine stuff now.
Aye, Baba, finally.
Please carry on. Sorry. I'm here for you.
And it's important to kind of have a repository of Black media telling stories as they happen, not necessarily waiting for something to be written by the victors of some war.
Sure.
And we have an opportunity now with where we are as a people to start having conversations that, one, are tough to have, two, conversations that we needed to have a long time ago, but also to introspect about who we are, why we are this way, and how it kind of affects how we interact.
Sure. Davos, thank you very much for the powder. Even though sengathi une favoritism, bakhona bangayitholanga powder.
Uthe kayifuni.
Anyways, Zimasa, Mustafa, Vabaza.
Yes.
Where does the Mustafa come from? Where are you from as well?
I am from the Eastern Cape. I was born there. Emaseleni, they call us thieves there. But I was born there in 1987, 5th of May. And I think what is important is to understand the context which we find ourselves, and as somebody who is a millennial, but we're kind of in the middle, but we understand Gen Zs, but we also understand the cultural context of the people that raised us, right? And I was born there in the Eastern Cape. I am Impondomise. I speak Xhosa, which is key, right? Because the Xhosa nation never really aggregated themselves into one kingship. We stayed in different sort of houses and kingships, and we never aggregated. We never forcefully aggregated into one through any sort of war. So,
do you think that was a good or a bad thing? Sorry.
I think it was a good thing. It's primarily within the Xhosa nation, the decentralization of our structures also kind of creates a framework for how we engage generally. We love council, Uplanti and all of that. And that also permeates into our family structures and systems. So the Ubaba is Ubaba, but he's not necessarily the only gent, right? Sure. Even in the way that we conduct our traditional affairs, imicimbi, imisebenzi, we do it in a very respectful way, and we have a 50-50 with Omama.
Sure.
So, which is kind of the upbringing that I had, right?
Sure.
So I understand that the role that a man or an alpha male needs to take relative to the confines of his family, his clan, his tribe, and his nation. Yeah.
Sure. Sorry, please continue. You were born in Ngobo?
Yes.
And then where you went to school?
So I went
how we get to Mustafa?
How do we get there? So, okay, cool. So I'm born in Ngobo. We are currently living Esada, in just outside the Komani, Queenstown. Then my grandmother gets a better sort of gig. She's a nurse. She now runs a whole lot of clinics, and she's looking after them. We then moved to a town, Episho, the capital of the EC. Yeah. Well, in name, because I don't appreciate how Gov has done a lot of things, moving a lot of buildings, systems, things to East London. Because the whole point of having it Episho was so that the place would, one, be almost like PMP, still exist, still have relevance, still have an opportunity to grow as an administrative capital.
Sure.
But I don't want to get into that.
Okay, fair enough. Because I've got my own issues with PMP.
Yes.
And before PMP, it used to be Olundi.
Yes.
KZN. These arguably obscure versus a Durban or a Gqeberha or East London.
But that's super key, right? And I want to go there quickly. It's super key because there are places like, to give context, there's only like one stretch of road that I've never driven in this country, which is like Piet Retief, Richards Bay.
That's impressive.
So I've seen the whole country.
That's impressive.
And I understand the challenges that one government has. I understand I'd say the hurdles that they've tried to get over that they can't. I understand the mismanagement, but I also understand the almost, wow, the gargantuan effort that it would take to bring second tier towns and cities into the mainstream economy. It's insane. It would be, because we all almost have to decentralize ourselves, and it starts with moving away what is easily moved away. Think of it like from Egypt, right? Cairo, it's packed. It would make sense to still keep the capital there, but they've got like the new Cairo city, which is going to be the administrative capital. And it makes sense because there is a relevance in moving a capital, because people will always go to the capital.
Yes.
It's why Abuja is the capital of Nigeria
and not Lagos.
And not Lagos, but you would think that because there's economic activity or a lot of it in that area, would want to put it there. So anyways.
But it's almost like a favor.
No, I don't think so. I think that
it's like we're already fine, so we'll kind of give you guys the thing so that you can develop nyana.
But that's primarily what a lot of systems are there for, to do, because without that, what do people do? Like the socioeconomic reality of a lot of places around South Africa, like the N14, right? As amazing, and I did sort of like a piece on the roads in South Africa. Sure. The N14 is an amazing road until you get to a certain portion of like the Free State Northern Cape corner, and then it's potholes, but it's an N road, right?
Yeah. And
you start to realize that without there being a relevance or a need to fix that road, it's not going to get done quickly enough. And so if you have, that's why Mahikeng is the capital of the Northwest, not Rustenburg.
And not Rustenburg.
Yes, it's important because you give that town its relevance, its need, its economic activity, right? And that's key. Okay. So anyways, back to this thing. So we then moved to Episho, December 1992, I think, and I stand corrected, but I think it was. Yes, it was just before the Bisho massacre, because I tell people this and they're like, were you really born during apartheid? And I'm like, I still remember the gunshots from 93, right? Sure. I was quite far, I was like 3 Ks away, but I still remember. Yeah. I remember auntie saying, get down. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was 5 years old, so I still have memories of that. And then I went to Episho Primary. It was sub-A back then.
I remember. I was there. I'm 1986. I've witnessed a necklacing. So we're deep there.
Yeah, you're right. Sub A and B.
Right on the cusp. Sub A, sub B.
Sub A, sub B. Then I moved to Shornville Colored School. Then we had a little bit more middle class money, and then that's when I basically then moved to the Anglo-Saxon school, which is Dale College.
Yes, man.
Which
Dale.
And I say it like that, but it shaped me. It shaped me, and what was key for it is that it shaped me in a province that still allowed me to express and understand my cultural context that was around me, but still gave me glimpses into the Western world that I would ultimately go into.
Sure. Dale is where you got your good English?
Yes, Mr. Hogg. He was from
Mr.
England.
Hogg.
Mr. Hogg, yeah. Quinton Hogg. He was from England.
There's a very rich tradition of the schools there. So I was at Rhodes in Makanda now, in Grahamstown, Ekhini, for 4 years, I think. And I'm lucky because I played rugby. I was a Zulu boy in the Eastern Cape, which would make me an outsider. But because I was deeply into rugby,
you're one of us.
I became one of the Xhosas.
Yes, you're one of us.
So I understand the deep tradition and culture. Dale, Queens, Selborne, Grey PE, etc. Once I had a chat, because my brother had a similar Rhodes experience, and he spoke about this separation between the Ciskei and the Transkei. And I don't know if you know anything about it.
It's massive.
It's almost like a class culturalization thing. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
So what's key is that my dad's side of the family, right? Like Ekaya, Simtat.
Sure.
But I grew up in the Ciskei Episho. Okay. So Inriba, or the Kai River, as the whites would call it, is sort of like the divider, because rivers and mountains are our geographical divisions.
Sure.
And the way that things work now, is primarily on a clan-based system. It exists, right?
Sure.
So there's a complete difference between guys from Mthatha, or business people from Mthatha, business people from Episho, Sky, East London, and business people from Epai.
Okay.
Right.
There's
at Gqeberha.
Don't know why they never called it Ipai, but anyways.
Yeah. So those three places have three different types of Xhosa people, right?
Okay.
And the way that they operate is completely different. The numbers, I think, are primarily on the Gqeberha side in terms of people. Okay. But in terms of Xhosa people, you would find that the most active, even in politics, right, are from the Cis guy and the Trans guy, and going all the way towards Ekokstad.
Who speaks the better English? Who's richer?
Who's richer? I would say it's the guys that make cars. It's the Gqeberha people. Okay. The economic activity within that area is really great. And I did a piece on this, and it surprised me as well, right? That sure. the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality as a whole is churning out proper cash, bro. Like okay. it's about 120 to 150 billion rand generating just municipality.
Does this money go to the locals?
Well, no, not necessarily, but there's an economic impact that exists within the space, and it's there in terms of the infrastructure that you see in whether you're in Utenek, Usetinaga, whether you're in whether you are in Gqeberha or you are in other sort of like Izpaluka, like areas just around. You find that there is an impact because there is a relevance there. VW is there, Isuzu is there, FAW is there, the guys from BAIC or Bike are there. Sure. So
that's like a relatively new brand.
Yes,
from China.
Yes, from China. Yeah,
okay.
And they've moved into the Gucha development zone, right, which is. When it started, didn't make sense to a lot of people because they couldn't see it, right? Sure. It's like, oh, we're just making these development zones. But it's now starting to snowball into something that is key because you've also got Ingocha, the port or the harbor, which was, I think they put like 10 billion rand into it long time ago, right? This was when government still thought long term, right? And didn't make up slogans like 2030.
Is this the ANC that did this?
Yes. Okay. It was, they basically revamped that port so it could be almost, it's not a deep, I think it is a deep harbor. Okay. Bigger ships can come in, more export can go out, etc. So you find that those guys in the Gqeberha area, it's a very formalized place. Sure. And it's surprisingly so. Great, they have great infrastructure, telecoms, etc. You find that some businesses actually center themselves in Gqeberha, sure. Not in Durban, not in Joburg, not in Cape Town, because one, standard of living is different there. Yeah. Cost, your money goes a lot further, and you've got the beach right there with less of the hustle and bustle. Sure. So you do get that cis guy, trans guy, friction, especially when it comes to things like tenders, right? Your clan counts. It actually does. And I guess
I'm trying to think of it in like the taxi industry type of mindset, if it's something similar to that. But clan for a normal person is like surname, the house, the family you come from.
Yes. So it's families, it's clans, and then it's tribes. So
what are the differences?
So primarily families, obviously you, and then a lot of families would make up a clan. So it's a group of families.
Different surnames?
No, same surname. It could be same. It could be same. It's Tagazelo.
Okay, so
right?
So a family is same surname.
Yes.
A clan could be different.
It's different surnames, but it's
within the same.
It's Tagazelo.
Okay.
And then a lot of clans would then make up a tribe, and then a lot of tribes would make up a nation.
Okay. Tribes are Zulu, Xhosa.
Not necessarily, right? Because what you also find is that the nation then becomes this thing. So you could actually, you're actually kind of right, because you would find that for instance, like Amampondo Mise, and all of these different sort of houses and
are those
clans.
Tribes or clans?
No, they would be clans, because then the tribes would make up a nation. So the Zulu Xhosa, as you said, would then make up the nation of South Africa and the black people. Yeah.
Fair enough. I wanted to ask about the cis guy, trans guy. So then you finish at Dale. Shout out to Dale and everyone we know from Dale.
Yes, and everybody who's done amazing things, and there's a lot of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dale is an amazing school, man. And I don't want to really speak about my experience because we're here for you, of course. But I was very jealous, man, when I got to the Eastern Cape. First thing being, as a Zulu boy, we don't have a rite of passage. We don't have initiation. And I craved that. I wished as a Zulu boy, after matric, there's like a camp where I'm taught songs and those things. I've had Sizwe Mpofu Walsh here, and he grew up largely in Joburg, raised by a white mom. And he speaks about how his dad, Advocate Utali Mpofu, was very big, and his mom was very big on the fact that Xhosa.
Yeah.
And he had to go to the Eastern Cape and go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I watched that, and also just watching the schools. And I think the last thing I wanted to say was, with the separation or the differentiation between Isiskay and Transkay, my brother was speaking in the context of there are Xhosa people that maybe end up running the country.
Yeah.
Big business people.
Yeah.
Who come from a certain side, and they're very different from Xhosas that come from another side.
Yes.
And if you feel that division is still there, and if it has any potential negative impact on the Eastern Cape as a whole.
I think people aggregate towards they generally aggregate towards people that have a common or a shared way of life, upbringing, etc. So it becomes easier. And I'll speak for people that are, I would say, like the same ages like my mom, right? Who are like the advocate that you just spoke about, Utali and all of those guys.
Sure.
And there's a huge cohort of people, primarily who are Transkay people, schooled in the Transkay, St. John's, key schools in the Transkay, right? And then they went to UCT as a group, as a cohort.
Sure.
And then these people are now administrators across the country. Highly educated administrators. And I would say, yes, the first thing would be to say that they've now grouped themselves and become the secret society.
Yeah.
But I would also then beg to say that the Stellenbosch guys have done the exact same thing, right? They went to certain schools, those schools then funneled them down to Stellies, and then from there they go into business, and then they know each other. It's how someone like a Roof Botha is now in Rule of Botha is in Silicon Valley, but he's still heavily tied to Stellies. Stellies can call him up, right? Is that to say that they are they're tapping into something unfairly? I don't think so.
The interest for me is it highlighted that Xhosa people are not the same, because we're
not homogenous.
I would travel around KZN, and when I came to Joburg, the type of Zulu that I speak is Northern KwaZulu.
Yes.
Closer to KwaNongoma, where the king lives.
Yeah.
When you go down to KwaDepe and Fethu, there's a different way of talking.
By the time you get to South Coast,
you realize it's different people, and a lot of people obviously assume. So I don't know if I interrupted you when you were still speaking about the three different groups. I don't know if you finished your point there.
No, I'm done with that. Primarily, okay. But when you get to the I'd say the Transkay people, Mthatha specifically, right, which was the old capital.
Lots of people with money, Mthatha, man.
Yes, and one of the reasons why a lot of people from Mthatha had money is because they were given, they were given houses.
Okay.
People like my grandmother, etc., they were given houses. And what is important about this is that it meant that a lot of people from Mthatha didn't actually necessarily take up debt to get their first houses. And I remember my grandmother, Mthatha, saying, no, right? And she says, like, primarily she got this house for ridiculously cheap, former state house, bought the house, went out to Elalini, stayed at Elalini for a couple of years, had people rent there, paid it off, came back. It was now an asset.
Shout out to the general.
Yeah, so there are things like that where she says, no, because one. So people from Mthatha came, there was not a lot of debt there.
Yeah.
There wasn't huge amounts of debt because people had a primary asset.
Which
and
is very important.
From that asset, they then were able to go around sort of like either making investments, getting into business. They could risk a little bit more.
Fair enough.
And the ability to risk gives somebody a sense that no matter what happens, I can always go back to my house that I own.
Sure.
So, and interestingly enough, that's where I come from. So my dad's side of the family, my dad was actually one of the first black lawyers Mthatha.
That's impressive. Shout out to your dad.
Yeah. No, sorry, not my dad. My great-grandfather.
Okay.
Vabaza.
Okay.
And he's actually mentioned in the Long Walk to Freedom. Mandela was his junior, F40.
Sure.
And he spoke about how sort of like, not arrogant, but my great-grandfather he knew his stuff.
Sure.
And the whole thing about it was, Utublekepos in court, he was swashbuckling when he was in court, and he spoke for people, but also at the same time, I think he cultivated a sense of education within his family, and that's where it kind of stems from. So you do find that Abantu baseMthatha, they like education, but they're also very, very proud. Some
very proud,
very braggadocious, almost
arrogant.
Yes, very braggadocious.
Yeah.
And they are people that one do want to ensure that there is an understanding of who I am, where I come from, and what I've amassed and achieved.
Are you related to Vabaza, Tembelani, Tombesizo? Because I remember Tembelani was from East London, and his dad, I think, was in law as well.
Yes, Untombe is my aunt.
Hectic. I know she was at DSG, I think.
Yeah, I know we're almost the same age, but she's my aunt, because our family trees at some point were...
Yeah, no. At some point that used to confuse me. Why I have an uncle who's younger than me? But you realize, no, there was one of the... It might be your grandfather, like a child who was very young, and then
who's now your age.
So, no, fair enough. What happens after Dale for you?
I almost went to Rhodes.
Okay.
I almost went to Rhodes.
I'm so sorry that you missed out on greatness, but we'll excuse you.
Rat and parrot. So I then get almost, you could call it coaxed or bribed into coming to Joburg. I didn't want to. Okay. My mom had been here since 96, 97, right? Okay. I didn't want to. I guess I was one of those people who wanted to follow a path of comfort at the same time, where I wanted to stay within people that I knew, structures that I understood. Sure. But my mom pushed me out of that zone. She said, "Hey, I'll get you a place at Labori." I did not know what Labori was.
Labori Village.
Yes, I then now know.
It used to be Lahori Village.
Hey, stop that thing. So I then come to Joburg. I get set up, but what I appreciate about my upbringing, what my mom did, is that she never gave me anything for free.
Yeah.
I worked for everything, and everything that I achieved opened the next door. And that is why and how I get into business. So I'm at UJ. I'm on like year 2.5, and everybody will understand this. I'm on year 2.5, and I decide that I want to quit. I've discovered this thing that is business.
What were you studying?
I was studying transport economics, BCom.
Okay.
All right. I then decide that I want to quit. It is obviously family-wide news. Meetings are called. I'm then asked, what is my plan? I don't necessarily have a plan, but I know I don't want to do this in this way. This is also at the time where I had gotten an internship at Transnet. Fun fact, the guy who was my immediate sort of like manager, mentor at Transnet was part of like some scandal now. So probably had I stayed there, had I stayed at Transnet, I would probably be part of all of that kerfuffle.
Seeing flames.
Yeah, all that kerfuffle.
Sure.
So I then decide, okay, cool, I want to get into this business thing, right? They asked me what do I want to do. I said at the time I wanted to go to AAA, I think. And they're like,
school.
Yeah, branding and advertising. And they're like, why? And I could not really articulate or explain why I wanted to do this. I then forcefully do this thing, and this is the point where it's like it's rock and a hard place.
Sure.
Right? I have to stand up for what I think is right for me, but also at the back of my mind, I realized that this is what middle class comfort gives you. The fact that you can push back on your parents, what they want, etc., but still knowing that you'll never be deserted. And that's one of the things that I thank my mom for, because one, yes, I grew up and I had to force and say, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do this thing.
Sure.
And we didn't speak for a couple of years, right?
With your mom?
Yeah.
Jeez.
We didn't speak. And it was a point of growth for me. And it wasn't on the case that my mom is not, she doesn't love me. I knew she always loved me. She's always loved me.
Yeah.
But I had to force that as a man growing up. I'm only 21 at the time. Cool. I start this business. It is a student placement business, right?
You didn't get into AAA?
No, I didn't get into AAA, right?
That's what you wanted? They said, fuck that.
Nah, we're not going to fund that.
Okay.
I just said, okay, cool, I was born. And then I started this business with a mate of mine with my so I got given a runway by my mom.
Okay.
And then she said, the last thing I'll give you is X amount of cash on this date. That's the last thing I was born. And I was like, cool, that's fine. With my last 1,200 Rand sort of like monthly allowance where I have to fit all of these things in, my friend and brother, Emmanuel Mpande and I, we basically
E-Man.
Yes, E-Man.
Shout out to E-Man.
Shout out. So we basically
it's another Dale boy.
Yes, we basically go and we register our first company. We grab a taxi to Sandton and we register at Shelf Company. We register Red Black, right? Our first company. We
Red Black because of Dale colors?
100%.
Okay.
And then we now know that we have so we started to see the opportunities, right? So we were students giving away flyers, going and helping out at events, corporate events, that type of stuff. So we said, the lady we currently worked for at that time, we realized that the only thing we were not doing was to send the invoice.
Sure.
We were sourcing the students, getting them there on time, managing them on site, client relations, blah, blah, blah. And I said to E-Man, bro, the only thing we don't do here is email the invoice.
Sure.
And I believe that we can do it. And he said, okay, cool. Let's back each other. So we took that last 1,200 Rand, no cash, put it in, went back. The lease ended. I had to leave. I went to E-Man's crib, Eshawela.
I stayed there.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I stayed at Eshawela with E-Man for 3 months while we were getting our stuff in order. And then we got our first client. Can't remember her name, Jewish lady.
Sure.
First thing we ever had to do was to pack Jewish school books for the new year.
Sure.
We basically said, we're going to do this on our own. We're not going to hire anybody. Let's go. We're not above anything. And when you start a business, you can't be above any aspect of your business.
Yeah.
We literally went and did this thing ourselves. We packed these books for an entire weekend. We gave her 20 Rand less than the rate. And you know how tight rates are in that. I mean, we were like, I think we were at 80 Rand a student at that time.
Sure.
So we had to take the rate down to like 60 Rand a student. And we worked all the hours and she paid us. From that thing, I then said to him, man, do you now believe how we can do this thing? And he said, yes. Fast forward 2 years, we had grossed 1.23 million Rand.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Yes, as 22-year-olds.
As young losers.
22 years. And we were losers, right?
Yeah.
All we did was drink beer, play Xbox. We had something like 300K in the bank, and the bank would keep calling us and say, don't you want to invest this money?
Of course, the banks
but
love that.
we 22-year-olds, we don't know what we want to do, right? So we had that, and that was our first business, right? And we learned so much. A lot of the people that we basically tipped to give opportunities to, we were a small and nimble team. Sure. We got all the way up to doing SAB marketing, sales and distribution conferences, doing discovery conferences, doing like something like 70 students in 2 countries, in Botswana and South Africa at the exact same time. We literally got to that point. But what I realized about this thing was that in order for you to keep growing, you need to add more people. You need to add more managers. And I just didn't think that was the right way. If we wanted to double our revenue, we had to get twice the amount of resources. Sure. And that's why that's why the guys at TCC, the Creative Council, that's why those guys sold. Because at some point, those 2 guys that are like, I keep forgetting.
Forget this guy's name
like
with the black hair.
Or something.
But anyways.
Like Oved or something like
that.
Gil, yes.
Gil Oved, yes.
Gil Oved. That's why those guys, because those guys had something like 10,000 students working every day of the weekend. I'm sitting there going, I don't necessarily want to do this. And I've always believed in how I see things is that there's always a shortcut.
Sure.
There's always a shortcut to getting the same amount of revenue, especially when you've gotten it the first time. Yeah. There's a quicker way.
That's an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes, 100%. There's a quicker way of getting to that thing. So then I say to E-Man, bro, I believe that my path requires that I go in a different direction. I take whatever savings I've got, I leave the business with him, and Are you
still staying with him? You've moved out?
No, we've moved out. Oh, things have gotten a little bit better. So now I'm in Rosebank. I'm 1 street away from Kong. I can comfortably afford where I'm staying, etc., and all of those things. And then we once had a whole mansion at some stage where we were just as boys, like the Red Black Mansion. Somewhere I can't remember where
you were living it up. So, because you know these stories, I've heard some, but a lot of people don't know them. These are almost Silicon Valley, PayPal mafia startup stories, but no one documents them the way they should be.
We never documented that thing. So So 100%, I then move, right? I take a break from the business.
Yeah.
But also at the time, it's kind of like business partners at some point and have to either reaffirm like in a marriage, you have to reaffirm why we're still here, and still see if our visions align, etc., etc. And I think the lovely thing about it was that it was very sort of like organic. I said, bro, I think that there's an easier way to do this, and I'm gonna go figure it out.
Okay.
Right. And that's how I land up in radio, right?
Before you go into radio, I've got 3 questions. The first one is, all Xhosa people from the Eastern Cape want to go to UCT. Did you want to go to UCT? Number 1. Number 2 is, you speak about your mom almost as a separate entity. So I wanted to know, this might be a personal question. Your mom and your dad, if they were together, if they were separate?
No, they were never together. My mom had me when she was very young. Okay. And my dad was like how do you call it? Like he was a princeling, right? His grandfather, my great grandfather, had left and still somewhere is there. He'd left and amassed a crazy fortune.
Okay.
Right, which obviously black families, there's an issue, and it's still there somewhere in some lawyers.
You must go find it.
Yeah,
you must find the shortcut to that money.
Hey, but remember, there's too many people, right, that lay claim to our great grandfather.
Sure.
But my father was like a princeling at the time, so he was very swashbuckling, man about town, Casanova, that type of stuff.
Senzanga corner. This is how Shaka was born.
So. They were never together. She was very young. I lived and grew up with my grandmother and grandfather. My grandfather is, on my mom's side, is my biggest influence. I literally take after him, his mannerisms, use of language, etc. He was a pastor.
Beautiful.
And he was, I think if he was born in this time, he would probably be wearing a red gown. If there's a gown after that, he would have done that. He wrote books. They were studied as Setwick books. One of his books I'm actually rereading because I was too young when I first read it. I didn't understand a collection of short stories. So my ability to write and to speak comes from him. Watching him speaking every Sunday.
Beautiful.
So you kind of understand when I get to hear something interesting and where all of this comes from. So I used to. And actually, my English comes from him, right?
Not from Dale. No, stop claiming this guy's English.
No. Quentin Hogg refined it, right? But my grandfather was the guy who would sit and would speak in English because he had a theology degree, right? In those times, because in those times, pastors had to actually have a degree. So I come from that family setup, very loving family setup, and. My mom, not necessarily because she was young and I was raised by my grandparents, you find that there is that sort of like finding each other in most conversations, interactions, etc. And we do that, and we're very healthy right now. Then primarily, I get to a point where now I want to jump into sort of like media. I don't
want you to speak about radio yet.
Okay.
UCT?
Yes. Okay.
And then my third question.
I wanted to go to UCT. Remember,
my third question was going to be about Eman.
Okay, so UCT. Let me tell. So the thing about UCT is that it is a convenient place, but I also believe that for Black people, it is part of our one comfort, but also indentured servitude. And the reason why I say this is because. The reason why there are so many Xhosa people in Cape Town, well, not as many, where there's a considerable amount and they're all linked to the Transkei, is because of the Cape Colony and how they used to take trains and they used to basically pack amaXhosa as into those things like sardines and send them there and tell them that there's a better life.
Sure.
And when you get there, they plonk you on some land and they tell you get a bus or you walk to town to make your living because they burnt all of our fields. So at the same time, you have to understand what it is. Then we assimilate into this culture, right? Of thinking that Cape Town for amaXhosa and people that fall under the Xhosa nation is the end all and be all.
It's the land of milk and honey for
100%. So you will get onto a bus and go that way. So even in my mind, as somebody who had never kind of gone out of the comfort zone of, I was born and raised in the Eastern Cape. I only fully left when I was 18. Right? So
you never wanted UCT? You wanted Rhodes?
I wanted Rhodes, I wanted NMB, and then possibly UCT. But my mom convinced me and said, UJ, because you'll get to live in a particular, you'll get to meet a whole sort of like poikikos of people.
Okay.
And that is important for you and your growth. And she sold me on that, and I'm grateful that she did.
Solid.
So
Third question.
For
radio.
Yes.
I don't know if you still have a relationship with E-Man.
100%.
And while you're
he's my brother.
His brother, cousin, Lombo. I don't know if you know him.
We are best mates. I was speaking to Lombo yesterday.
These are the guys that I think, in terms of mindset, if some of us could come together and have some kind of a strategy vision.
Yes.
I think there's something really beautiful we could do. Because I know he's traveling the continent now.
Yes.
On business and entrepreneurship. And he's
Zambia, Mozambique.
Well.
Yeah. So we speak almost like every other day with both of these guys. Yes.
Very excitable guy.
100%. And we have never left each other.
Sure.
The Lombo's dad is he's the chairman of HCI, Hoskins Consolidated Investments. And he's one of our mentors. Beautiful. Right? So we have full access to him. We can go, we can sit, whether it's a Semandeni, whether we're in Howick, we can go sit and say we have a problem. How do we fix it?
Sure.
And it's important for people to have that board of directors of your own life and of your own things, because you are not all knowing. You have to have people that have been there, done that, who are unbiased and have absolutely they have no skin in the game, whether you win, whether you lose or not, but they want you to win because you're somebody that if you win, you then catalyze other people winning.
Fair enough.
So we're still very tight as a unit.
Bro.
Yeah, I love them Pandes. They took me in. They're
great gents,
100%,
amazing human beings. Sorry, radio and media.
So now, remember, I'm a shortcut guy.
Sure.
And I'd always been, so I'm at the lowest part of, I'd say, communication cycle at this point. I am the last person who gets briefs. I am, hey, we've got something at the Sandton Convention Center, blah, blah, blah. I then move from that business. Radio interests me because I can kind of articulate myself really well, but at the same time, I want to know how people make money in this thing.
Sure.
Right? So I then start to produce a show on Trans Africa Radio for my cousin and his friends and my boys, etc. So Oz and Lebu, they have
Trans Africa is online.
Yes, it was online. It was on DSTV. It was on DSTV at the time.
Radio in the country.
Yes, they were actually at the time on DSTV, right? Exclusively.
Okay.
So I then start to produce a show for maybe I did 6 months with them. I produce a show, working desk, writing stories, writing the show, sort of rundown, etc. But I'm also deeply entrenched in social media. I start to understand what this thing is going to be. This is around 2011.
Okay.
I start to understand that there's something about this thing. I'm not sure what it could be, but I think we could get something out of this.
Sure.
And then obviously at the time, social media at that time was exclusively used by people that planned parties. Like they were the only ones who were truly making money out of this thing. Hey, come to this place. And it was like an announcement board.
Sure.
So I then I'm posting, and Twitter's really going well. We've now formed this parliament, this Twitter parliament with Xhosa people. It's myself, it's Wasanga, it's Clickswell, it's Squash Mafu. Yes. All of these people. So we were in a group, and we were
I'm actually an honorary Xhosa for real. I must join the Xhosa Nostra Secret Society you speak about.
Yeah. After this,
sorry.
So we then literally used to drive social media conversation.
Sure.
We used to drive it wherever we wanted to. And this will become very important when I tell you about the first time I ever pitched what we could do at South African breweries. Well, when it still had a soul. Sure. So no. I'll get to that. Sure. I don't appreciate. I think it's one of our biggest assets that we should have never sold as a country.
Okay.
And the PIC allowed this to happen. So we then get into this point where we're running Twitter, tournament. So we used to group together as a couple, and we used to run social media. We would get stuff to trend all the time, like for giggles, for shits and giggles. We used to get stuff to trend, and it's
all this time you're not studying.
No, I'm not. I kind of
hit the streets.
I'm trying, my boy. I'm trying to study, but it's not cracking.
Okay,
it's not cracking. So I then get into this point where I've got, maybe at that time I had like 7,000, 8,000 followers at that time. This is 2011 into going to 2012.
That's huge, by the way.
Yeah, at the time it was massive. I had more followers than brands did.
Yeah.
So I then meet Zama Dube by chance because of Ulita Umzozoyan.
Yes, I know
right?
Lita as well.
Yeah, so in Rosebank, because I lived up the road, and Lita goes, he needs to kill some time. Let's go chill. We go chill there. I think he knew Uzama. We end up sitting. Zama says, I like your vibe. This is 2012 now. And also my money from the business is running out.
Sure.
My savings from the business is running out.
You're not getting paid at Trans Africa?
No. It was purely voluntary. It was like, you get
passion,
paid.
I'm interested, I want to learn.
100%.
You were actually studying, but School of Hard Knocks.
100%. So then I get to this point where I find that I meet Zama. Zama's like, hey man, like it's Jan. She says, next week, come through to YFM and just audition to be like my producer and co-host.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, cool. And this is off like a 20-minute conversation. Zama says this. I'm like, okay, cool. That's fine. I go to YFM the next week, deep end stuff. I arrive. Our show at the time started was the face off. It started at 9 till 12 prime time, and I arrived there at 8. And Zama's like, well, produce the show for us today. It's a Monday.
Jeez.
Holy snap! It's 8 o'clock. I have to get this thing out by 9.
Sure.
I put the thing together, sharp. I do the first show. We roll it out. After that, I have a meeting with Tumelo Diao Monaeng. Amazing guy. He literally is one of the people, like in your life, there's key people that help you pivot.
100%.
He's one of those people. I sit down with Tumelo. He gives us a snoop session about, okay, what the show, how it sounded, etc., etc. And then he starts to ask me questions. He's like, okay, cool. About my worldview, sports. No. Understands like, where am I in the scheme of things? I then he's impressed a little bit, but he's like, wait behind the ears. Cool. I then come back Tuesday. I come back Wednesday. I come back Thursday. Now I'm panicking. I'm like, is this like, when is he going to tell me if this thing is on?
Yeah.
I think by Friday, I'm sitting with Da Crooks, Kutlwano.
Sure.
He's the guy who did the Amapiano documentary for BBC.
Okay.
I'm sitting with him. He was producing Mo's show in the morning.
Sure.
The Mo Flavor show.
Sure.
And I'm like, dude, I'm worried. Like, no one's saying anything. I'm probably never. He's like, bro, it's Friday. You've just done your last show now. Your contract's probably going to be here by Monday.
Beautiful.
And as true as nuts, on Monday, first thing, 8 o'clock, Tumelo calls me in. He says, this is your contract. Take it. Let's discuss it. But yeah, you're on.
This is YFM.
YFM, bro.
I know YFM has given birth to so much talent.
2012, YFM. I still listen to YFM till this day. Still this day.
Support your Genesis.
Off the street, 6 months of like obscure sort of like producing. They just basically said, bro, do this thing. And from there,
sorry to stop you there. We've got 50 minutes.
Yeah, because 2 o'clock, power goes out.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Danke Kongolose.
Yeah.
You had a good vision for it, but a bad vision for ESCOM. Sorry, please continue.
Yes. We can go to solar.
No, but we've got 50 minutes now.
Yeah.
Of life.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. So I get into why I pushed 3 years at YFM. But what's interesting about my YFM era, and this
but
is...
you kind of made it, eh?
No, this is where the pivot
Didn't
happens.
Didn't you feel like that?
No.
At the time?
Oh, yes. I mean, I was attending like Dalez's all-white party.
You're a producer at YFM, dog.
Yeah. I'm the gatekeeper, dog. Like, I get like invites, Dalez's all-white party, standard 3 years I was there. Every time I was at Y, met everybody in the industry, entertainment industry. And a lot of the people now kind of still remember me from that era. Remember, Joburg is a product-based market. What is your product? Wenzandoni.
Okay.
Wenzandoni.
You're right.
Right? It's key.
You're right.
So I'm at YFM. Now, I could have taken one of two paths. Or I could have taken one path. I could have, and I even did start, I can DJ. I can fully DJ. Right? Bought a DJing set. I could DJ because it's the YFM thing, right?
Okay.
You're in YFM, you can DJ, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Extra income. And everyone is a hustler there. This is what's key. That's what I learned from people like Mo Flavor, from Waras. These guys were getting 13 gigs in one weekend when spring opens, right? At like 15 grand a gig. I want you to work that out. So you're sitting in the same room as people that are doing that. At the same time, I think Bonang and Sizwe were there. That's where I know Sizwe from.
Sure.
I mean, I remember overhearing a conversation, and they'll probably clip this, but I remember Bonang and Sizwe having a conversation next to me, and obviously they were just speaking. And they were literally racing about who's going to make the first million that year in revenue. And this is like 2012, mate.
Sure.
And I was like, yo. But at the same time, I've seen a mill go through my accounts. right? As 2 years ago, I was, so at the same time, you get perspective.
Yeah.
So at YFM, you could either become a DJ, an MC, and that was it, and then stay on air, right? And there was another path that a lot of people didn't think about. So I started making friends with the guys upstairs, the salespeople, the legal people, the programmers, the whatnot. And I wanted to understand what it is that they do, why they do it. Why did I do that?
Why did you do that?
Because I wanted to understand how the money is made in this room, in this building.
Earlier.
Yes, in this building. How do we print the money?
Yeah.
What do we write on the invoice? By the way, I learned how to invoice from YouTube.
That's proper.
Yes, whenever we started the business.
Sure.
Yeah, that's how I learned how to actually build an invoice.
Sure.
I still learn from YouTube till this day.
Sure.
So
you're still studying from the School of Hard Knocks, even online?
100%.
Yeah.
So I then go upstairs. I meet a guy by the name of Ayanda Tikise, right? Amazing guy. He's now, I think, a media exec somewhere, somehow.
Sure.
I meet Ayanda, and Ayanda happens to be Xhosa as well. So I meet Ayanda, and I ask him, I say, bro, I need to understand how this thing is done. How do you sell this YFM platform?
Yeah.
And then he says, perfect. So my show used to be from 9 till 12. At 12 o'clock, 12, whatever, if we have a snoop, if we don't have a snoop, I go upstairs, I open my laptop, I sit next to Ayanda, and we basically build presentations on how to sell YFM.
Sure.
Right? How to sell shows, what the ratings mean, how to draw clients in, how to link up with agencies, etc. Everyone else at Y went the other route. They want to DJ, they want to MC, they want to be a star. Sure. I said, I want to know how the bones of this thing works. So I then learn how to do this thing. Ayanda then hits me with hey bro, there is an opportunity for you to actually make a 1:5 deal. I'm like, what is that? He's like, if you bring, because you're on air and you're a personality, YFM has this thing where if you bring a rand, they will make it 5. I'm like, what? He's like, if you bring 10,000, we will give you 50,000 rands worth of value. I say, hold on, Machi. I take some time. I think about this. I say, there we go. I've now found a faster way.
Sure.
I then go register another company, right? Which was Gapdoor Trading, right? Gapdoor. Yeah, okay. Gapdoor, Kabula, my dad, and Dorrington Door, my grandfather.
Beautiful.
Right? So I then put the names together. Cool. Go to the same place I went to in Sandton, and I basically registered this company. This company would be a media buying company for radio, right? At the time exclusively for YFM. So what do? I then look at the opportunity. I say to myself, okay, perfect. If I get 1:5 here, that means that I could basically get somebody or a group of people to put the cash together, take a huge profit on that, still take a 16.5% of the money that I bring in, that Y would give me as an agency fee, and then I could get X amount of value. So what do I look at? I look at all the people that are starting events, right? So I'm looking at Bokatla Malachi, Neo Muel at Homecoming. I'm looking at various sort of guys that were doing events at that time, right?
Was Back to the City alive then? You don't know?
100% alive.
Pop Bottles?
Pop Bottles was all of this. So guys like in that space, right?
Sure.
I then basically say they don't want to spend more than, let's say, 20,000-30,000 rand, because at the time, they like money was tight for those guys, right? But they want to be on YFM.
Sure.
So I then group all of these guys together. So I say, what are your events for the next thing? Then for the next season, I bring the money together. Maybe each guy's paying, let's say, 30,000-40,000 rand. I grab the Gau train, go meet up with Katlego Malachi and sit down with him, and we click. I say, bro, I can do this for you. He says, sure. I group these guys together, but I think 5 guys. It's like 200K, but I get like a mill's worth of value.
Sure.
So suddenly I'm like, holy snap. Okay. Then remember, I only have to deliver 200,000 rands worth of value, because that's what you've given me.
Yeah.
But I can get up to a mill. So then I work out, what do I need to pay to Y to get 200,000 rands worth of value that I can show to these guys?
Sure.
And how do I double the value that they've given me?
Sure.
So I only have to pay maybe like 100K. So I keep 100K, and then Y selects to give me 16.5%, 16,000. So off the deal, I make 116,000 rand.
For 200,000 worth of value.
100%, my brother. 100%. I did that for 3 years.
Making money.
Bro,
You knew you were in the right place. Like, I wasn't meant to be there doing a BCom and transport.
Well, I'll come back to that because I'll come back to that. So
Sure.
What's super key about this is that becomes, so I'm doing my 9 to 5. I'm doing this gig as well. Then I add the third thing. So my cousin calls me up and he says, bro, he's just started working as a community manager
Sure.
at, I think it was FNB at the time. I think he's still there. Yeah, he's still there actually.
Okay.
And he says, there's an opportunity to community manage for Castle Milk Stout, but you have to go through this agency, Metropolitan Republic. I'm like, okay, cool. It's like, there's an interview like on Friday. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I'll go. I go there, I arrive, I meet an amazing lady who becomes another pillar in this thing, Angie Hutting. So Angie, I sit in a room, very small thing at Metropolitan in Rivonia, and she says, we're looking for a community manager. You're decent at the social media thing, but why should we hire you? I then say to her, firstly, Castle Milk Stout had, I think at the time, 1,300 followers. I say, I have probably like 8 times to 9 times the amount of followers that this brand has.
Yeah.
You're trying to speak to black people. I'm black. I understand the market. I'm the guy.
Yeah.
From that, she goes, I love it. You're in. Right?
Is this an interview or conversation?
It's both.
Okay.
Right? Both. She hires me. I then start to now formally learn how to copyright.
Sure.
Right? And this is very important because in advertising and communication, there's art and there's copy.
Okay.
So then I basically, okay, cool.
What are the difference between the two, if you don't mind?
Art is primarily the visuals that you see, and then copy are the words that go with it. And funny enough, I'll explain how, maybe I should do it quickly.
Sure.
So my love for advertising came when I was in standard 7, grade 9.
Grade 9, yeah.
Yeah. So
Jeez, you're old.
Stop it. So I'm flipping through FHM magazine.
Yeah.
Right? For Him magazine.
Yeah. We used to love FHM. They were nice bums.
And the reason why I fell in love with words, I'd already done that. Remember, I'm a pastor's kid, I'm a PK, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And the reason why I've kind of fallen in love with this particular one, is that on the first page, it's written 3. Just a blue page, blue hue, it's written 3.
Yeah.
Right? The word. You flip over, it's written 2. You flip over, and the copy read, the reason why all countdowns end at 1, introducing the new BMW 1 Series. It blew my mind. It blew my mind with words and a mechanic. They got me to want to know more, see more, and understand what this new 1 Series was.
Do you know, I studied art in high school.
Really?
And one of the guys I matriculated with, I sang provincial choir with him as well. Umbuso Ndlovu. I think at some point he was an exec for Saatchi and Saatchi locally and in Malaysia.
Wow.
He went to AAA and I wanted to go to AAA and I didn't have the balls. So I ended up studying accounting and the CA stream. I wanted to go into advertising, and it was stuff like that, magazines and story and
things that make you go, wow. The sort of like the merger between words and pictures that ultimately create a story for you, right? So that's how I kind of fell in love with this thing. So anyways,
That's why you wanted AAA at some point.
You see, now I understood why I wanted AAA. But remember, many years back when I quit, I couldn't explain this to my mom.
Sure.
So
that it was the FHM magazine and the 1 Series.
Yeah, and this is like 2002 or something.
Sure.
So I then now am at an agency. I'm still at YFM, right? I still have this business that sells media. And I'm now taking on this responsibility of being a community manager and digital manager for Castle Milk Stout.
Under Metropolitan
Republic.
Yeah.
That's also where I meet the craziest mofo ever, Paul Warner. Paul Warner is a maverick in the South African advertising space. The type of guy, when we'd won an account, he'd walk in and he would obviously say a lot of platitudes and swear, and then he would then take the hosepipe MacBooks. And then when you go, Paul, he goes, go to IT. You've backed it up, right? Go to IT and go get a new one.
Jeez.
He still is crazy. He's
psychopath.
They're the type of guys that would do like Friday, Friday at agencies, everybody drinks.
Sure.
He would primarily just like bring strippers to the office. Like that was Paul.
It was like a Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street.
There's a story around how this one time they were in Cannes, for the advertising awards.
Yeah.
And
biggest awards on
the planet, by the way. And they had a couple. And yes, 100% they had a couple. And they had one of the execs from the telcos, the execs, and they took out the company card. And they went on such a crazy bender that day that they walked into the awards the next, they didn't shower, didn't do anything. And they had gone in like 20,000 euro.
Jeez.
So it's that type of guy, right? But he's also the type of guy who told me that you can fire clients. Yeah. I learned that it was a very important lesson for me, that you must never be a slave to a client.
Yeah.
So I get into the space, I'm learning, I now have to go pitch. I remember I walked in and I had to go pitch this thing of influencer on Twitter.
Yeah.
I had to go pitch it at SAB.
Did you know about this? Had you seen it somewhere?
Influencing. Yeah, on the internet. I'd read about it in America.
It wasn't something we had in South Africa.
Yeah, it had never been formalized.
Okay.
So I then go and I have to kind of pitch this thing. So Maxwell is coming to the country. It's 2013. It's early 2013. Maxwell is coming to South Africa. And Glen 21, that's how I met him. Glen 21 is bringing Maxwell, etc. And I'm saying we could bring a group of people to amplify our conversation and we don't have to go through Twitter.
Yeah.
And they say, how? And I explain to them because we had been doing it, remember? So myself, Wasanga, Clicks, Sposh Mafu, all of these guys, Sens, we were basically moving conversations wherever we wanted to. So if we wanted to popularize a concert, a something, we could do it as a group of people. Remember, this is 2013. No one had ever done this.
Yeah.
Now we go and into this room at SAB, the big boardroom at the bottom floor at number 1. They used to call it number 1. Number 1, Santon Close. And we get there and I've brought this presentation and Angie said, bro, it's your thing. Do it. Do it. If you believe that this thing is going to work, do it. I'm backing you. I walk in, all the brand managers are there and I have to tell them what trending is. What does it mean to trend on social media or media on Twitter? How do we do it? And I made this very simple thing. We are in a stadium with 94,700 people. What trending is if a group of people in a corner of the stadium have one conversation. Doesn't have to be 94,700 people.
Yeah.
5,000 people. If 5,000 people in the stadium are having one conversation, that is a trending conversation.
Sure.
And with that visual, the guys were like, okay, we're listening.
It's like a Mexican wave.
100%.
They start a Mexican wave here.
Not even. You don't have to. Remember, the people in this corner have their own views, own ideals, own conversations. They can have their conversation. Then another 2,000 people having their own conversation. Then 1,000. That's what a trends list is on social media. So I explained it to them in this way. They started to get it. Then I said to them, very bold, I said, you've given me an hour to present this thing Q&A. By the end of this, I want you to give me one word, one of your brands, and I will make them trend before the end of this thing.
Jeez.
And then they gave me the word. I think it was, I don't know, Castle Light might have been something. Then I sent it to the guy. I said, guys, please
hit.
This is the thing. And by the end of that thing, it was trending. I projected onto the screen. I said, Castle Light is trending here. They said, my brother, we are sold. We don't know what the value of this thing is yet, but we're sold on what you can do for the prominence and awareness of our brands.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons why and how I kind of understood that we could turn this thing of social media into money. But now wait, I don't know how agencies work fully. I'm an employee. Yes.
Which is
so what must I do?
How do you guys make money?
So I stay over. I would stay. So I now work at Y in the mornings.
Sure.
I then moved to actually they'd moved us to a night show. Okay. So now I work at YFM at night, but during the day I work exclusively at agency.
Sure.
But if I can, I would then stay over, right? And then sit with a team that's pitching on Nando's, pitching on FNB, pitching on Sanlam, pitching on whatever, and learn how this thing is done. And obviously at agency, because no one cares but the people that know how money works, no one looks at the printer. I would look at the printer. And if somebody's left a printout of an invoice to SAB for my particular services, or I would look at it and I'd take it and I'd go home with it. And I'd sit there and I'd understand what are the billables, what are the line items, what are the quantities, how does it work? How does, from my hours, how do they build value into this thing? I had to learn how to create an agency because I wanted one.
Where does your curiosity come from?
I think I like to know how things intrinsically work.
From when you were young?
Yes, I'm an overthinker. I've always been an overthinker. So if I'm going with my grandfather or my grandmother and we're going to town, I would ask weird questions like, okay, what time are we leaving? Okay, which road are we going to take? Okay, when we get there, where are we going to park? We're going to park by, but you know that like, panga go shop right, so so panga say farmers and then so walk, but then, so I was hyper obsessed with the future, hyper obsessed with knowing how we move. So back then you're an overthinker, you're just a weird kid. But when you realize you're actually a strategist, you want to understand what are the variables that you need to put into this thing in order for you to get a great product out. So I then learn how the invoicing works. I remember, and based off that, I think it was the first time I was technically call me like I was a first year junior copywriter at level at that time. Because remember, nobody cared about social media at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember rocking up with the BMW and Oaks were like, Aungege, boy. And I remember that time, I think I was making like, Y at that time, I think was paying me like 15. And then I was making like another 15 at agency per month. Right? And I think at the time I'm like 24 or something like that. And then I've still got the business on the side.
Are you speaking to your mom and telling her, hey, look, your boy is not doing too bad?
That's actually funny enough. That's the year where I went back.
With the PM?
Yes. And then she was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I think it's starting to work out. And even me, I wasn't sure what this thing was. So let's move a bit quicker. Let's fast forward. So now I'm doing this thing. I'm one of the guys. We plan the thing. Maxwell comes to South Africa. It blows up. We show them, hear the stats, amazing stuff. And I obviously get my guys. I get clicks. I get Wasanga. I get everybody to come in. We all make money. I pay my G's. I pay my gents. I take them to concerts all over the country because Maxwell is doing Durban, Joburg, South Africa. I mean, Durban, Joburg, Cape Town. And then that's actually the year that Mandela passed.
Okay.
Right. And I remember because then Maxwell did like a whole show where he even gave us he did like 2 hours in Joburg at the Dome, which is now a second-hand car dealership.
Now it's We Buy Cars.
Yeah. So we smashed it out the park. And then after that, and I want to stress that there is a very key thing that I always run away from, which is institutionalization.
Okay.
A year later, I get an offer from Metropolitan. They like, come through, let's take you to 30, my boy. Come through, come do this thing apart. At the same time, my contract at Y is now, I think it was almost on its last year. And I'm like, okay, I can do this thing. They're like, no, but we want you to come. We want you to give you whatever it's going to take for you to come and do this thing for us inside. We can see the potential, etc., etc. And I said no. Because in that 12 months, in that 1 year, I'd learned enough to go and start my own thing.
Then I'll sell it to you from outside.
Yes. And then at that stage, I then meet Shaga Sisulu. I say to Shaga, bro, this is what I want to do. I want to start an agency. He says, I have a shop already. I've got one client. I say, cool thing. I come in. Let me come in. Let me do the thing. And that's where I learned to be a one-man agency, right? The only thing I can't do is draw, Penuel. Everything else I can do.
Actually, I'm getting a job after this, because I can draw.
The only thing I can't do is draw. And I basically ran the agency as one-man team with Shaga and his cousin, Che Ajulu. And we primarily, I was the asset, right, in the company working. And then within 6 months, I think we were now presenting to DSTV, right? Then we brought other people on board, etc., etc. Wasanga and I take people along.
Your crew?
Yeah, I take people along.
Tyler Perry does it.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino does it.
I take people along.
Yeah.
That part of my journey is quite interesting because that's the part where I started to see real cash.
Okay.
From Twitter, and I don't know if I should say this, but it doesn't matter. It's another part of my life.
It's up to you.
It's fine.
It's up to you.
We got to 15 mil plus of just doing social media per year. We did
15 bar.
15 bar. 1 million.
Income.
It was $1 million at the time. Revenue. Of social, of helping brands to go viral on Twitter.
Jeez.
And we did this in 2014. 14, 15, 16, 17. We sold the company in 2019.
That means you're rich.
No, bro. COVID hit. You know how COVID?
I don't. You're going to have to tell me.
No, the money was finished. Remember, I was a youngster back then.
Okay.
When you're older, you have more responsibilities. So your savings goes.
Your expenses were high.
High.
Is what you're saying.
Man, I was driving an SRT and I had a BMW.
Okay.
The SRT was for weekends. Oh no, company card, petrol card, like it was kwakuning.
Okay.
And funny enough, that's also the time where
were you the guy that would swipe meals at a restaurant?
For who?
For whoever. Let's say you're pitching to me, you want, I don't know, me to join your tournament and make things trade. You're like, I'll pay.
Not necessarily. So we were part of a scandal which
Hey son.
No. I want to clear this up. We were part of a scandal where they said that we received 50 million rand from the ruling party.
Okay.
Right? And that was quite troubling because there was no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And because of the people that I worked with and the business partners, because by that time I was already a shareholder, right? It was an easy pickings. And this is how the media works. They primarily just said, no, there was this budget and et cetera, and I'm not going to mention names, but we were in the news, in the media, et cetera, for this type of stuff. Well, the company was.
The link had to do with Sisulu?
Yes.
Okay.
And there was never any such revenue that went through. And it's key to understand this portion because when you start to have a little bit of success, people will turn against you.
Of course.
And people that I had put on were now the same people saying, yeah, but they're driving SRTs now. Bahamba ngama SRT. How did they get those SRTs? But at the same time, people don't understand that we were the first people not to get paid when we didn't hit target.
Sure.
We'd make sure you are paid. So all of this thing was my education around business, how to do this thing, etc. At one stage, we were 30-something employees.
Yeah.
30-something. A lesson, we were bloated, but we didn't know that.
Sure.
We were growing. So
job creation.
Yeah, and you start to understand that a lot of the things that you get into are important for you to actually take a step back. I call it passing back to the goalkeeper.
Okay.
So pass back to the goalkeeper so you can see the game.
Okay.
Because if we're always attacking, we're never going to see what shape they're playing, what shape we're playing, where the opportunities are. So pass back to the goalkeeper. And that's what I did after 2019. Look, I believe that I got to the pinnacle of what strategy and communication on digital and social media is. I dare say that there are very few people that understand holistically the agency setup and can be a one-person agency like myself. There are a few very great people, stars. But what I always find is that they're not great business people.
Sure.
Whereas I'm not saying I'm a great businessman, but I understand where the opportunity is and how we can turn over and make money and give value to brand.
Where does your bravery comes from? So we spoke about curiosity. Being a curious kid, you're just a loser there that overthinks and researches.
You're just a nerd.
But the bravery is something else.
I think it's the middle class comfort. I always knew that no matter what happens, I had no black tax and there was no.
You've got nothing to lose.
I've got nothing to lose, bro. And that's the key, right? Like if you're middle class, you've got an opportunity. You can, and everybody has a vision, right?
Sure.
You've got the guy at Kasi who has a vision. He has a vision. Yeah. He can see how things are, but he has absolutely no way of taking that first step.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a mindset thing. Maybe I don't know because I will never speak for people that I've never necessarily been in their position.
Sure.
Right? But as a middle class kid who saw that, hey, I could try this thing and make money out of it, and if it ever went belly up,
sure,
I could always go home to my mom.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
That's pretty dope. Where does the name Mustafa come from?
It comes from social media, and it comes from my dear friend Lebu Lukwom, Lebu Pizza. When we started to realize that we could become brands on social media, Lebu said, at the time I was called Mush, right? Okay. Which was like a bastardization of my high school nickname. And at the time we would do this thing where we would add like names onto people's names, onto nicknames, and then people would call me like Kuz, Case, Mush, Mash, and then Mush stuck.
Okay.
And then because Mush stuck, I then called myself Mush on social media.
Okay.
And then Lukewarm was like, Lebo was like, bro, if you're going to be a brand on this thing and you've just crossed 10,000 followers or whatever, it's got to be one thing.
Yeah.
It's got to be one name that people can say and it means one thing. And then we looked and we said, what is it close to? And he said, Mustafa. And then we Googled it. And in Arabic, it means the chosen one.
Boom.
And we said, Mustafa it is, bro. But I didn't want to spell it the same way because I'd already had the M-O-S-H.
Yeah.
Then we just added the T-A-F-F-A.
Sure.
And then it became Mustafa. And that's where the thing comes from.
Two things. The first one being you still need to explain how SAP lost its soul.
Yes.
And then secondly, here's something interesting.
Yes.
And how that came about.
100%. So SAB lost its soul because, okay, I was very intricately involved in the SAB thing. One, I was one of the digital guys for one of their brands. But previously we were running conferences for them, show calling, directing conferences, myself and E-Man for marketing, sales and distribution in Sun City, 2009, I think. That's where I met Chris Bangle, the guy who actually designed the One Series. That's quite interesting.
That's pretty dope.
That's pretty dope. I met the guy and we spoke.
That's pretty dope. You're like, it's because of you that some of us are kind of sort of here. That's dope.
And SAB had a soul. I want to, and the interesting thing about it is that my brother, my cousin, Oz, started at SAB. Well, it started at Red Bull, but then...
Oz who?
Ongeziwe Lupuan.
Oh, snap. He's overseas now doing big things.
Oh, we're nice. We're in Paris.
Jeez.
So primarily, like, that thing that SAB had a presence, had an essence. When a guy said, I work at SAB, straight out of varsity, you knew that the guy was working for one of the best employers in the country. One. That guy was one of the best among us because this guy, whatever degree you had, SAB had a place for you. Whether you were a scientist, a businessman, a salesman or whatnot, South African breweries had a place for you. You were going to be inculcated in the traditions of South African breweries.
Sure.
So now what were those traditions? SAB guy walks in. If 4 guys walk in, I could tell you what the SAB guy was. It was the guy who's dressed in the checkered shirt. He's wearing chinos. He's got formal shoes on. He's driving a white car, likely a VW. He's got boot stock in there, and he's got a card. And he's a well-mannered gent who understands that whether I'm walking into a tavern or I'm walking into Ink the Club in Bramfontein. Yeah, that's how old I am. I was actually once in line with David Gow at Ink.
Jeez.
Long time ago. So whether or not you are at any establishment, you represent South African breweries. You are front of house. You are our salespeople. You are the force that gets more heckies. They used to call them heckies. More hectoliters sold of beer. You are important to us.
Yeah.
And all of the alumni or the people that went to SAB had a presence about them. They respected the place. They loved the place. Right? That's why, for me, that's internally. Then you've got to look at primarily what SAB served. Yes, SAB comes from a dark history, right? Of exploiting black people, altering our minds through utywala. But I want to look at SAB as an asset and what it did. Through those funds, SAB was able to conquer the world and become one of the top 3 breweries on the planet. The planet.
SAP is an Anglo, it's not an Afrikaner. It was an Anglo company. It was a British.
I think it was. I think it was British, but I think it was a bit of both, because there were people like Norman Adamy, guys with the green blazers, right?
Yeah.
Who had been there 20 plus years. Graham McKay, who at the time before he passed was making the same amount of money as Wayne Rooney.
Hectic.
Like 200 mil in rands. He was.
you love tradition? I'm thinking Dale. I'm thinking, YFM also had the red and the black.
100%. It's quite crazy.
SAP. And you know with YFM, because you're mentioning certain guys, I've sat with about DJ Spoo.
Yes.
And they speak about Tor Kabzela or DJ Fresh. Also, a lot of them got their shots there. And it would have been very nice.
You're actually drawing a line.
If they had something like that where you're like, okay, this is a YFM guy.
Yes.
He's front of market. He's our
guy.
Number 1 ambassador.
100%. And
we're not building businesses like that.
Yes.
Oof.
Yes, we're not building legacy businesses as black people. And SAB, for what it stood for and what it represented, was that it was South African, I'd say, excellence taken globally.
Do you know if it was owned by Anglo American? You don't know.
And it probably was.
Okay.
It probably was at some stage, because remember how these sort of like incestuous relationships with a lot of these companies happen.
A lot of these, Anglo American almost had
they even
investments in some of the biggest companies.
I believe they even owned OK Furnitures at some stage.
They did. They sold it. They sold it to Crystal Visa
for one rand in debt.
Yeah.
Yes. So all of this happens at a time where SAB has clout in the market, is one of the best employers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
PIC, obviously, because it's such a massive asset, must be invested in it, right? As an activist investor and also the administrator of like assets under management for government pensions.
Sure.
They then say there's this thing that could give shareholders value, which is let's sell. Let's sell to InBev. And I understand the financial sort of...
Someone wanted to get a fat bonus is what happened there.
Maybe it was the guys cashing out at the top.
Could be.
Maybe, right? Maybe they felt that there was no more innovation in the market. I don't know. But when you've got... And you obviously understand those four sort of... what do they call this? Is that the Boston Matrix?
Okay.
Right? This is Wits Business School speaking now. Where it's like you've got a cash cow... you've got a dog, you've got stars, and you've got... And primarily this is like how you classify businesses. So how do you get to a cash cow? SAB was now a cash cow. Maybe it was too big, it was a gorilla in the room, it couldn't really move as quickly. That's why people came in, Heineken, Amstel. That's why the guys at Distel, people's palates were changing. There's new things, there's Savannah, there's this. And SAB struggled with that, right? And I remember those conversations from the 2009 Marketing and Sales Distribution Conference. There was Norman Adamy delivered a speech where he said that we are now the big gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
We can't see what's behind our back, and we can't even scratch our back. And it was at that time where there is value, one, two, but other people around the world want to consolidate, right? Because that's the nature of things, right?
Sure.
We want there to be one. We as humans, as consumers, love choice, but we also want like one, because then it means that I have less decisions to make.
Sure.
And then they go on to take this amazing company to then maybe not even break it apart. They sell it as whole. They tell everybody that you're going to make a lot of money. And we look at the short term. We say, yes,
of course.
Oh, we're going to make money. We're going to make so much money. What about tomorrow, Chita? What are you going to do? Where are you going to put that money? What is that money going to do? If you start a business, you must start a business knowing what the liquidity events are.
Yeah.
And this was an exit liquidity event.
Yeah.
There was nothing post this. They didn't say we're selling SAB to start this thing. They said we're selling SAB and all the shareholders will make money.
My heart was broken when the Afrikaners sold Afgri to the Americans. And I'm wondering, because in my head I was thinking maybe the whole plan is we don't know where the ANC and the country's going. South Africans, for whatever reason, are scared of foreign investors. They treat them like gods. So let's pretend to sell offshore. That's what I thought they were doing with Barclays. And ABSA, I thought that's what was happening with Vodacom and Vodafone. Let's pretend to sell offshore and then we'll buy our shares from the back so that we become foreign investors.
Via Mauritius.
And we're no longer local investors, so no one will touch us.
Yeah.
And the government will be like, guys, let's not upset the foreigners. You're like, but these are the same guys here. That's what I thought. No,
they sold it. It's like now, if you think about it, which brand from...
Are we still good on time? Sorry.
We can just transition because the convo is going. That's one thing I'm realizing, the convo is going.
Yes.
So which transition and then Kiro do the convo.
Sure.
Now.
The transition.
Let him finish SAP.
Yeah.
And then we can transition for the last 15 minutes and speak about his current brand and what he's cool for now.
Yeah.
We're gonna run for 6 minutes now.
That's fine.
Good.
Yeah, that's fine. We can. So primarily it's at that time where you realize now that the soul of the business, which is now AB InBev, is not South African. It's not South African. There's a thing, there's a texture that you understand about a company that's South African, especially a trailblazing company. Yeah. You could go into MTN, it feels South African.
Yeah.
MTN feels South African.
I'm just thinking the Sharks have been sold as well now. I wonder what that means.
You'll understand when you go to is it Hollywood Bets Kings Park.
Sure.
You'll feel it. There'll be Change nyana.
Sure.
It's like when 2010 and people had to drink Budweiser. You'll understand. Something. No, conte off. So they then sell this thing with no plan.
Yeah.
They take that money. Everybody cashes out. I mean, I know of guys that were cashing out like their Zenzele shares, SAB Zenzele shares, like 10 mil. Like everybody, like, nice.
Yeah.
But now you sit back and you look and you go, okay, subsequently, what's happened?
What an important point. Once you cash out your money, what is your plan?
What's
because
next?
Money has to do something.
What's next, Chita? What's next?
So I was sitting with DJ Sbu. He's like, yo, there's this guy on Instagram. Here's something interesting. He's like, I'm like, no, man. Mustafa, I know this guy. I used to play touch rugby with him. He's like, really? He's like, this guy is fucking brilliant. I'm like, I know. And I know we don't say much because sometimes you view and you think that's enough, or you like and you think that's enough. Now that I've got a smaller nyana platform, it's important for me to bring yourself and people that I really admire here.
Thank you.
Where I can. So here's something interesting. How does that come about? What has it potentially done for you now in your new, I don't even know if it's a new pivot. Maybe you can also tell us what you're busy with as well.
So SHSI is quite interesting because during COVID, I know a lot of people said they were going to... SHSI. So here's something interesting.
SHSI.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people said that they were going to pivot.
Okay.
But they didn't really pivot.
Nope.
So what I did during COVID was to take a step back and look at the content that I was consuming. Why was I consuming this? Why was this content stimulating? And then I asked myself, where is this for the SADC region? I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Then I said, okay, but I could find it for Nigeria. And I don't know how that made me feel. So I was like, but we should be documenting these stories.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, I believe that I have a relatively vast understanding of South Africa along whatever lines you want, tribal lines, racial lines, economic lines.
I love the fact that you've traveled the country. The amount of land we have in this country, people don't know.
I get surprised when people say there's not enough.
There's no land. I'm like, you guys have never traveled this fucking country.
Maybe around the urban areas and the areas that people want to go. There's congested. But
Would you like more water?
Yeah, please.
Please carry on.
You could literally drive for kilometers.
Sure.
For kilometers, and on the right there's farmland in Ngamakwe. At Transkei. And we're just not turning that over. So for me, it was to start to create what I saw globally for South Africa, SADC, and SADC, firstly, initially. But also it was key to understand that there wasn't someone who was able to distill stats and facts for people and tell them how this makes sense. So in advertising, when I do a campaign or I help a brand communicate or whatever, there are 3 things that I always make sure that are important. Who are you? What story are you telling me? How does it change my life?
Yeah.
If every piece of copy that you create tells people who you are, what you are telling them, and how it's meant to change their lives, you are then in the right direction.
Sure.
We did not have content around our area.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our area or our corner of Africa that would be able to articulate a lot of what's going around us from a socio-economic perspective. So primarily when people ask, what do you do? Yes, I'm a nerdy creator, but I am a socio-economic commentator. That is what I do. I take what is in front of people and I contextualize it relative to numbers, money, revenue, and I give you what the impact is and
on
where
you.
we could, on you and where we could take this. Nobody does that. So when I was in Cape Town now, this past holiday, I sat there and I looked at the things and I was like, what do I understand about this place? And I was like, well, I've been to Amsterdam and I realized the reason why we have Buitendracht Street in Cape Town is because there's one in Netherlands, in Holland.
Sure.
And it's one of the things that I'm very inquisitive, and I'm sure you've noticed from our conversation. So when I got to thing, and I always say to people, this is the first thing you should do when you get to any country. First thing is to go to their museums.
Yeah.
See what they put up. But
that's for nerds like me and you. Other people want to go to their clubs.
But you must go. And what's important is that, I mean, when I was in Amsterdam, I also went to the Johan Cruyff Arena. I consider that to be a monument, right? I went to the Rijksmuseum. I went to tons of other museums, and I saw. It's when I started to understand like the story around the quiet confidence and pure bravado or restrained bravado that the Dutch have.
Sure.
The Dutch are one of the richest nations on this planet, but nobody understands and knows that.
Is this per capita?
Bro?
Because I know they produce a lot of food. People don't know that on a small piece of land.
Bro, in company, the thing of companies, this thing that we do all the time of a group of people coming together for a common vision, a common goal to make more money on a capitalist system, it comes from them.
Sure.
Dutch East India, the East India Company. But why was that so? It's so because the Dutch Navy literally laid waste to everybody. The Spanish Armada, the British Navy, people don't actually think about the Spanish, the Portuguese, everybody. That's why they were like, we can't fight these guys. But you don't get that perspective, right?
Sure.
And
so you like Afrikaners like me?
Well, I appreciate Afrikaners for what they were able to do relative to them and their consciousness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I didn't appreciate the fact that they turned, and when they became conscious, they subjugated us, which then forced 100%. Us to be conscious as well as black people.
I've said before that there's a chance that in particular white Afrikaners, because I think they're closer to us Africans than the British.
Yes.
I think there's a chance. I was speaking to Mzwanele Manyi, and I was asking if Afrikaans people are decolonized, and how they dress and how they think and how they live, and it was like, shit, you're right. Okay, he didn't say shit, but and I was like, there's a chance that some of these white Afrikaners are waiting for certain black people to almost welcome them and be like,
let's work.
We know you guys fuck shit up, but
let's work.
Let's make things happen because you guys are like us.
Let's work.
Yeah.
Family structures are quite similar. The need to, there's a lot of similarities around Afrikaners, but anyways.
Sure.
So to link and see the world for what it is, rather than for what people tell you it is super key. And that's what I hope to do with So Here's Something Interesting.
Yeah.
To connect the dots that I see, because 1 is a dot, 2 is a line, 3 is a trend.
Boom.
And there are things that people need to understand about how South Africa is built in society, and not from a political perspective. I think it's too easy. I think it's a simple one. Yes, everything could be political. But what's key is the interactions between the races, the tribes, the genders, and whatnot. And that ultimately underlines and underpins how we as a people work, make money, spend that money, etc. Now, So Here's Something Interesting is one of the platforms that people will see from me maybe in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years that will be like, I actually think I understand what this guy was trying to show me.
Yeah.
Because many people won't read the Super Afrikaners.
Yeah.
But I'm reading the Super Afrikaners so that I can kind of like link the dots for you. So I can bring you something interesting about this. Now, it's my understanding in communication that allows me to create a product that people instantly like grab onto, because I understand psyche. I've been in social media before. I understand the communications agency perspective of it, of how to sell this thing, but also at the same time, selling this thing, but also giving people and taking that money from brands to sustain me so that I can create more of this thing.
Yeah.
Now the pivot is quite interesting. I think in 5 years, and this is bold, but in 5 years, I want to be facilitating conversations relative to the third world or the emerging markets at Davos. Davos is happening like next week, right? It's the biggest thing on the planet. It's where everybody goes to decide what are we doing this year. Yeah. It's presidents, it's captains of industry globally, finance ministers, everybody. And people don't even understand what this thing is and how important Davos is for everything. Yeah. It's like secret societies open meetings. Like, what do they say when varsity is open? Open day.
Sure.
It's the open day for secret societies around the world. That's what Davos is. It's the big table that we're not necessarily on.
Yeah.
We're like next to the table. But it's quite important for people to understand that South Africa, in the way that I see it, will probably never necessarily fail. And this is a bold statement because there is financial and economic opportunity in South Africa. We are a $300 billion GDP economy.
Yeah.
We're not going down, gents. Yes, people are moving things around, chips around to make more money around, but we're not going to go down in the way that people think we need to go down.
Sure.
You need to travel this continent. You need to travel the world and realize what we've got here. Yes, the people, and it kills me, the people who are the politicos and the businessmen around the world, in South Africa, go around the world, but yet they do not understand what it is. So Zim goes there. Zim obviously doesn't have as much influence in anything that happens in the country at the moment, but we will run this country very soon. And we go overseas, and I'm the person going into trying to understand Dutch culture and how it affects our culture in South Africa and what we can do. When you go to Amsterdam, you see that Melrose Arch is literally like a suburb. It looks exactly like the brickworks, the everything. It's literally cut and paste. What the Afrikaners and the English do is that they travel the world. They leave South Africa, bring money together, the revenue. They go to the rest of the world. They see what's cool and they bring it here.
Yeah.
They've always done that. Naspers was that. They went all around the world to see where they could invest, and they were told that this 10-cent thing in China is going to be a massive.
Sure.
What I do is that as a nerd and as a story writer, as a storyteller, I am making this really big subject palatable and chewable for normal South Africans to understand. That's all I'm doing.
It's fucking brilliant. I wanted to say, someone was speaking about our economy crashing.
Yes.
And how important it is. I think it was in a group. And I said, not for South Africans.
Yes.
This country is very important for the rest of the world. Because
too big to fail.
I've said to people that we are almost like a factory and a farm and a mine for Europe, the Americas, and Asia. That's why.
Have you seen the oil and gas opportunity we've got?
I've heard of it. And I think one of my new mates, Rob Hersoff, documented a piece. It came out recently.
Yeah.
And before him, I remember Cyril's face lighting up, speaking about I think it was Total.
Yeah.
If not Shell. Gayton McKenzie speaks about gas, I think, in the Karoo.
So let me give you let's go down the rabbit hole. So oil and gas is one of the biggest opportunities. It's primarily our new gold. It is the gold rush. It starts to make sense, Penuel, when you start to think about all of the G8, G7 guys suddenly being so ready to give us money.
Sure.
Have you ever just asked yourself why?
They want dibs on something.
It's not the coal, gentlemen. It's not the coal. The coal is too easy. It's oil and gas. There are oil and gas deposits that stretch from Namibia. Namibia is they've got a discovery of oil and gas. Namibia. Because it makes sense, right? Angola's got oil and gas.
Mozambique's got gas as well, which is also
going there. So you stretch right around South Africa. In our EEZ, our economic zone that the country owns, we have gas deposits, oil and gas deposits.
So I'm going to be Dangote in the next 10 years.
But that's if you position yourself, Penuel.
Let's shut down this thing. To a Karoo manje.
But the Karoo is one of the places.
I must position myself around
It's
the
one
belt.
of the places. It's either you're in the coast, even inland, right? Sure. We've got to make... So remember what they have to do. They have to get South Africa to be indebted.
Sure.
They have to get us to be indebted.
Of course.
So now they're trying to throw money at us.
That's how you repossess assets.
Yes.
That was the Ellerine's business model.
Yes.
They give you furniture you can't afford. They
100%.
repossess, they repackage, they sell it again.
So they're trying to throw money at us as a country, right? They are going in using the NGO model to various key communities. They're telling them that this thing will destroy your oceans. But I still, and I implore people to come to me and show me the data that says that they do oil and gas exploration and processing globally.
Sure.
Are those places so destitute that this is not an opportunity that South Africa should explore fully as a country? We have not had an economic plan as a country for a very long time. This changes everything.
Jeez.
This changes everything.
We're going to be chatting and I'm going to be a dollar billionaire.
Bro,
come on, boy.
Everybody can get money into this.
No. Just me and some of our mates.
Yeah. See, keep it here. Keep it here.
Keep it here.
So just to close off that thing, why would a French a standing French president come to South Africa unannounced.
Sure.
Emmanuel Macron just arrived, like umshita nje, bengdlula lana.
Sure.
No. There were two important things. The discoveries that we've got that probably are, there's probably more that they've discovered that they haven't told us.
Sure. This is just the stuff we know.
There's Cabo Delgado, right, in Pemba province in Mozambique, destabilized because of the gas, oil in the gas. Then we've got us. Then suddenly you've got, you know, when a protest happens, bro,
Sure.
you know what you should look out for? When a protest happens, you should look out for what paper the signs and protests are printed on. Do that for yourself. The glossy paper, it's expensive paper. Who's paying for that thing? When people protest, they barely have signs. When a protest or a movement or an action has paper, look at what type of paper they have.
Laminated,
That
printed.
tells you who is saying save the wild coast.
Sure.
Who is saying that? But we've got to fight, right? You've got the big players. You've got Shell, you've got Total, you've got BP, you've got all these guys fighting via NGOs to try and destabilize areas. And when the one winner comes out, or they basically decide how we're going to split it, you take the west coast of SA, we'll take Bomos Gas, Mossel Bay down there, Brilpada, Leipert, those gas deposits. You guys take Wild Coast. When they've divvied up everything, this NGO noise around oil and gas in South Africa is going to cease, and they will have found and figured out a way how to make money from it.
For the average black person in this country, because I'd like to think we're elite, just straight talk. We're educated, we're curious, we move around. Is there hope for the average South African, or is it going to be on us to try and help them in the future? Because there'll always be zombies just waiting to be told what to do.
So I have this thing, right, where I believe that South Africa needs 1,000 competent managers. 1,000 from the top down. 1,000 people, from the people that we send our cabinet down to the ministers, down to the premiers or the chairpersons, down to the whatever. We need 1,000 competent people.
This is politics, not business.
Across politics, right? Because the business people, I'm not mad at South Africa. We've got some scandalous companies, but generally corporate South Africa tries, right? If you could match that, the grit and the ingenuity that corporate South Africa has, and they have it. I mean, they've survived things that many other people would have literally perished in.
Sure.
If you could match that with 1,000 competent managers in a parallel structure to create a shared vision for this country, we would honestly, we'd maybe double, triple, would be a $1 trillion economy.
Are you putting your hand up?
I am, but I've got to go the business route.
Okay.
Because I believe that politics in its very nature is perverted in this country right now. I don't think that I don't think that we have the right momentum right now in politics to create
the right environment for talent. Talent will
because why should a clever black go and try to create a base of people in Centurion that will vote for him?
Sure.
Remember, our politics in South Africa is based off ibase. Abantu bakho baphi? Where are your people? So we find that, and maybe, right? Maybe the individual sort of individual candidacy thing might, but it also doesn't, right? So South Africa needs a ruling class, and I'm talking about politicians now. I'm talking about, we're going Mason, right? We're going Freemason, we're going the Illuminati thing. Because I believe that in a world where we are the richest people, why would we let people do their own thing?
Sure.
We wouldn't. So we need our elite, our ruling class, not the politicians, not our ruling class, to create a vision that no matter who takes office, South Africa is moving forward.
Stellenbosch Mafia, the Jewish Board of Deputies, the Muslim Judicial Council, black people don't have an equivalent.
That's why we still don't have a shared vision.
Zim, thank you so much for coming through, bro. Looking forward to more of your content.
Pleasure.
And I'd like to officially invite you to please come back soon. I think we have a whole lot more to chat about.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it.
Easy, Holmes.
Yeah.
Out.
Sharp.